Tom from Red Radio Controlled Models. What we have here for you today is a build overview of the Freewing Yak 130 70mm ducted fan. This model features a 70mm 12 blade fan unit, flies on a 6S pack and features all the scale features like tracks, flaps, ailerons, elevator and rudder. This model is ideal for grass, which we'll go over in the build review and also the flight review in another video. And it is an amazing performer with a lovely lightweight kit with a fan that produces nearly 2.2 kilos of thrust at 58 amp, meaning you can get flight times of in excess of 6 minutes. So let's go over the build review and I'll show you some of the scale features while we go through. So the first thing I'm going to show you with the Yak 130 is the manual. As with all Freewing stuff and Flightline RC stuff, it is fully comprehensive. So the first page on all the kits always shows you the contents listing, and then inside you have the instructions on how to put it together. There are also instructions within the kit on how to replace servos, arms, horns, just as they've done it at the factory. This is great for if you ever need to replace a spare part or put something on. It just makes it so much easier. So the first thing that it says for you to do in the manual is to install the carbon spars into the wings. In the kit you'll have 2 carbon spars just like these, and obviously you'll have your wings which have a little black hole on the inside. You have to glue the spars into the wings. I recommend using the contact adhesive that comes with the kit, but rather than putting the contact adhesive on, sliding it in, then letting it dry when it's out, you'll find it very difficult to get it in like that. I would push it in with the contact adhesive on and let it just set. So what you need to do is just push the wing in with the spar and you can just see how far it goes in. So what I do is push my fingers onto that, make sure it goes all the way in with to the stop, take the lid off the glue and then just put the glue onto the carbon all the way around. Don't worry about too much excess because you can always just wipe it off, it's only contact adhesive. It's all the way around. Push it into that hole and then twist it as you're pushing it in. This will make sure that you've got a nice even layerage of glue. There'll be some that are stuck out on the side, just use your finger. Wipe it all the way around. If you've got a little bit of rubbing alcohol, use that, but try not to get it anywhere near the top surface of the paint. Obviously once you've done that, let that set for 10 to 15 minutes, and while that's setting you might as well do the other wing, which is exactly the same as this. Obviously the next thing to do now is to put the tail on. There are, in the top of this fin, 3 wires. There will be 1 shorter one and 2 longer ones. The 2 longer ones are for the elevator, which is what we're going to be doing next. So just put your fingers through, make sure you pull those through as far as they'll go, because they won't be pulled all the way through. There we go. Turn the kit over and your 2 wires will be sticking out of the back just here. With the elevator, what I would recommend doing is using a little bit of 220 grit just to sand off the paint on the top, just to make sure it bonds that little bit better. It is fine without it, but if you're going to be doing some high G or high speed manoeuvres, it just gives it that little bit of extra security. I'm not going to do that at the minute, I'm just going to stick it on as is. So once you've got the tail, flip it over. You can see on there that the elevator and the control rods are already pre-installed, which is a nice feature. Plug the servos in. If you've got some servo locks, pop those on now if you want to. If you don't, then don't worry too much about it. Occasionally the wires do fall out to the top, so just lift it up, put it back in. Lift the tail up. There we go, just double check to make sure they're plugged the right way around. Right, move it to one side. Again, use the Freewing contact adhesive and put the glue all the way over all the surface. It does glue all the way up to the back. And just make sure you put it on. Put enough on, but not too much. You don't want it squirting out too much of the side. Just lift the wires up. Put a little bit on the front face, because obviously that flat plate on the elevator will sit onto that. Then once you're happy with the coverage of glue, pop the tail on, push the wires through as you're doing it, and there's a little pin at the back and you should feel it locating. Squeeze it up. Once you've done that, take any excess glue that's come out the sides off, and then take it back off, flip it over, and then let it dry. So all I did is wait for the glue to just go tacky, and then push the tail on, making sure it was straight, and then left it on there just to set for a couple of minutes. Just pushing it up to the front a little bit just to make sure it's nicely located and stuck. So the next part is the vertical stabiliser. The same thing applies that I said about the horizontal. Just go over a little bit with a bit of 220 grit if you feel so inclined. It's not quite so important for this, but again there's paint on the inside of there and on the inside of there, so I would do it on both parts. You'll have one wire left over. All you have to do is just plug that wire into there, making sure it is the right way around, like that. And then when you pull it through, just pull the wire a little bit further forwards, as there is a little tiny groove in the top of the fuselage that the wires sit in. Make sure that they are sat in that, and then again get the contact adhesive, put it all the way on the inside. Every flat surface that the tail is going to sit on, make sure it's all along all of them. You can just put it on one side and then push it in, as it will transfer to the other side when you do that, as long as it's fairly fresh on. If you have left it on for a little while, I do recommend again putting it on both sides. So there we go, that's on all the surfaces in there. Get the tail, make sure the wire isn't sticking into the glue, and then push the tail in. I have already dry fitted this just to make sure, and then once you've done that, just check to make sure that this tail is in line with the horizontal stabiliser before the glue goes off, which will take about 10 minutes, so you've got plenty of time, and that's looking pretty good. Then take the fin back out and let the glue go off. The wire is long enough so it will sit back on the table. I recommend doing that then rather than putting it back on the paint, just so it doesn't pull any off. So now the glue's gone tacky on this, again just making sure that the elevator wires as well as the rudder wires are pushed all the way in. Push this down, and then I always put it in front first, going towards the back. Obviously because it's contact adhesive it's going to stick straight away, so push it back in. You'll know from when you dry fitted it if it's going to sit nice and straight, and then once it's in it will set pretty much within about 2 or 3 minutes. So the next thing to do is to glue your nose cone onto the front of the model. The great thing about this nose cone on this yak is it is actually plastic. So when you come to storing it on its nose, it's not going to crush any of the foam. Again, using the contact adhesive, putting it all over the surface. Make sure you put it on this block because that's where it locates into the front of the nose. Put it all the way around. You don't need massive amounts, just nice thin quantities, as long as there is some on the surface. You can flatten it out with a knife or whatever you fancy doing it with, and then push the nose onto the front, getting the lines nicely lined up. And then once it's on, take it back off. I do recommend leaving this slightly wet when you push it back on, so probably only leave it for 4 to 5 minutes before you put it back in, That means that when you push it in, you can move it just a little bit. So the glue's gone tacky. Locate it in the front again. Push it in, maybe a little bit stiff, and once it's up, that is it on. A great feature that the new Freewing kits have is the canopy. The canopy is now held on by a small latch on the top. There's none of this plastic sticking out the top anymore. It's a metal latch that comes back and the canopy comes off, which has a lovely nice little scale pilot. The only thing I will say about the latch is when you put it back on and pull it back, that doesn't shut automatically. You need to push down on the back. When you hear the click, that means it's on properly. So the next part of the build, I've already put one wing on, is to put the wings on. So all you've got to do is you've got your two leads on the inside. Both are labelled on the wing side and in the fuselage side. Just plug those in, push the wing tube into the hole, and while you're doing that, just push the wires that are in the fuselage into the gap. Maybe a little bit stiff at first, but you'd rather have a tight fitting wing spar than a loose one. Then just gently push it in and push it up. Once you've done that, flip the model over, and then you'll see underneath you've got two screw holes. In the bag that the carbon spars are in, you'll have two screws with a washer head. If you've got a magnetic screwdriver, great, it saves you from dropping these into here. Just screw them right into the centre, making sure you're not cross threading them. Just screwing them in. Make sure you don't over tighten them, because it is only going into plastic into foam. Just when you feel a little bit of resistance, that's that. And then you do the same for the back one. Just push the screw in, supporting the bottom of the model with your hand. There we go. And that's that done up. Now I've put the wings on, I'm just going to show you all the features of this model. The first thing is the ailerons and the flaps. I've not had to adjust the horns underneath at all from this coming out of the box, which I'm incredibly impressed about. The ailerons are metal geared servos. They are incredibly quick, as you can see. It's the same servos that are on the elevator, and the flaps are also fast servos. If you've got a servo slow, would recommend slowing those down just so the pitch change isn't quite so dramatic, as it does pitch down just a little bit. The rudder is on a slightly slower servo. It just means it will soften out those movements on the ground a little bit with your steering nose wheel. If I just show you the retracts underneath. So underneath your retracts, fold nice and cleanly away underneath there. There is a little hole in the side there that you can see that you can get into the screw for the nose steering if you so wish. Thank you for joining me for the build overview of the Yak. As you can tell, it is a lovely scale model at a very small form factor. The fact it has removable wings is a great little feature, which means you can throw it in the back of the car and take it anywhere. It has very, very precise digital servos, retracts, flaps, the whole lot. The only thing I would like to add before stopping this video is the connector that comes with this kit is a Dean's connector. I personally wouldn't use a Dean's on 6-cell. If your 6-cell has got it, then fine, but they are only rated to 60 amps and this does draw around about 58. So I shall be using an EC5 just because that's what I've got. You can use AS150s, you can use XT150s, or XT60s perhaps, or 120s, but I would change that just to be on the safe side with the amp draw on this model and the voltage. That is it for this 70mm Yak 130. I shall join you at the flying field where we shall do a flight overview on it for you.